The National Desk, America's News Now.
Donald Trump is back on the campaign trail undeterred by his possible legal troubles, and many in the GOP wouldn't have it any other way.
With him being in the courtroom yesterday and then in Alabama today, I mean, all eyes across the country are all on Alabama tonight.
Shots fired in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School again, this time by court order. Will it turn the gun control debate? Labor problems in the U.S. as worker strikes hit the country. Some are ongoing, some are looming, and one started today. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. Happy Friday to you. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and this evening, former President Donald Trump is set to speak at the Alabama Republican Party's annual summer dinner in Montgomery, a day after he was arraigned in Washington, D.C. on charges tied to January 6th. This as Trump racks up endorsements for his presidential campaign from the entire Alabama House GOP delegation. Tomorrow, Trump will head to South Carolina, where he'll deliver the keynote speech at the state's GOP's 56th annual Silver Elephant Gala. It's expected to be the biggest one in the event's history. According to the most recent New York Times Siena poll, Trump still has a commanding 24-point lead over Governor DeSantis in second polling at 20%. Senator Tim Scott and businessman Vivek Ramaswamy remain close behind, but still in single digits. On the national level, Trump still has a commanding lead. He's the choice of 54% of GOP voters. DeSantis is far behind in second, if you look here, with 17%. No one else garners more than 3% of the prospective vote. House Democrats want to watch Trump's court proceedings in D.C., and they want you to be able to, too. 38 representatives signed a letter led by Congressman Adam Schiff asking the D.C. Judicial Conference to allow for live broadcasting of the trial. Typically, federal courts do not permit cameras in the courtrooms. Today, the former president called the many lawsuits against him weak, writing on Truth Social in part, "I am leading in all polls, including against Crooked Joe, but this is not a level playing field. It is election interference, and the Supreme Court must intercede." Still, that is just part of the backdrop of the run for the White House in 2024. The National Desk's Scott Thuman explains how Donald Trump's not guilty pleas are just the beginning of the legal fights before him.
In a twist on Trump's lock her up attacks against Hillary Clinton, he now finds himself on the receiving end. The divide over Donald Trump's future perhaps energizing both sides.
We all witnessed what happened in the Capitol right over there. It was started because of lies that were told by Donald Trump and his cronies.
I hope he goes up another 5 points in the polls. Every time Jack Smith goes in front of the podium, Trump goes up another 4 to 6, 7 points.
Despite his latest arrest for allegedly trying to undermine the election process and prevent the transfer of power to Joe Biden, Trump's defense team painting his indictment as an attack on free speech.
Is being prosecuted by his political opponent who controls the Justice Department and is using the tools, the sacred tools of the criminal justice system, to censor a political opponent.
Ulterior motives, they claim, at play.
You know, in America, you are entitled to raise a question. You're entitled to question whether it was honest or not. So stop using government to go after people who politically disagree with you.
Trump is also waiting to hear if he'll be charged in an investigation here in Georgia over allegations he tried to reverse his 2020 loss in this state. The Fulton County District Attorney suggesting grand jury indictments could come soon. A grand jury deciding if Trump tried to force election officials there to alter the results.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Yet Trump, based on positive polls, ever defiant, posting, "I need one more indictment to ensure my election." Now, as for his Republican primary opponents, the reaction kind of runs the gamut. You've got people like former Vice President Mike Pence or Chris Christie who say this should mean the end of Trump's chances to return to the White House. And then you've got Vivek Ramaswamy, who has said if he's elected, he will pardon the former president. Dee.
A lot of ground covered there, Scott. Any idea on when we might see a decision on that Georgia case?
No, it's very much a wait-and-see mode. There's no way to really clue in on exactly when we're going to find out if indeed the grand jury is going to return an indictment or not. But in the meantime, it's certainly not preventing the former president from being in the spotlight. In fact, this weekend, he'll be at campaign events in both Alabama and South Carolina.
All right, live in Washington, D.C., Scott Thuman, thank you. Today, security experts were still responding to a cyber attack that hit hospital computer systems in several states just yesterday. Facilities run by Prospect Medical Holdings are still closed right now. Some emergency rooms had to close yesterday, and some surgeries and appointments were delayed. The FBI is now working alongside local law enforcement to find out who is responsible. 4 teens are lucky to be alive today. Look at these images after their vehicle drove off of a 100-foot embankment in Payson Canyon, Utah. The driver and 3 passengers, all 17 years old, each sustained injuries. One girl was flown to a local hospital. Officials say she was ejected from the car after not wearing her seatbelt. Her condition is unknown at this time. The other 3 suffered cuts and broken bones. Utah officials say that roughly 20% of the state's car crashes this year have been caused by a teen driver. Today, police fired at least 140 bullets in a Florida high school on purpose. The 2018 Parkland school shooting was reenacted as part of a lawsuit against former officer Scott Peterson, who stayed outside while 17 people were killed. He says he couldn't tell where the gunshots were coming from, but victims' families and a survivor want to prove that he did. Several members of Congress also toured the building today and held a roundtable on school safety. They agreed on the need for federal funding for a wide array of safety measures. New details now. A woman connected to the Gilgo Beach murders was identified today as Karen Vergara by Suffolk County District Attorney Raymond Tierney. Vergara was 34 when she disappeared in February 1996. Her partial remains were first discovered in April of 1996 on Fire Island. More of her bones, including her skull, were later found near Gilgo Beach in 2011. No charges or direct connection was made to Gilgo Beach murder suspect Rex Hewerman today, but he remains the main suspect in the death of at least one other victim found at Gilgo Beach. In Orange County, California, a Superior Court judge, Jeffrey Ferguson, has been arrested for the murder of his wife. He was booked on a $1 million bail this morning. Police found Cheryl Ferguson, 65, in their Anaheim home, suffering from at least one gunshot wound after answering a 911 call. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Well, the seesaw status of President Biden's border asylum program has swung back to being enacted, at least for now. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joining us from Washington.
It's a short-term win for the White House.
Our border enforcement plan works. Unlawful border crossing have come down to the lowest that we have seen in the past 2 years.
An appeals court upholding the Biden administration's new asylum policy, blocking a lower court's attempt to end it. Under the rule, migrants have to prove they were rejected asylum in a different country in order to be allowed into the U.S. It's a key part of the Biden administration's post-Title 42 border strategy.
Though I'm a Democrat, I feel like I've got to say this. Our current president has made it too hard for people who want to lawfully, legitimately claim asylum to do so in the right way.
The ruling comes amid a recent uptick in migrant arrests. Homeland Security now sending 140 new ICE agents to key areas in Texas, Arizona, and California, increasing the number of agents there from 60 to 200. Border states continue busing migrants to Democratic-run sanctuary cities to draw attention to the crisis. New York City dealing with an influx of 93,000 and counting.
This is an absolute mess.
As the city runs out of places to house the newcomers, Mayor Eric Adams reportedly considering setting up migrant tents on the youth soccer fields of Randall's Island and in Central Park.
Eventually, this was going to come to a neighborhood near you. We need to control the border.
Liberal comic Bill Maher calling out what he sees as hypocrisy of sanctuary cities like New York.
Don't pretend that you love migrants so much, and then when we send them to you, you don't like them. You liked them when it wasn't your problem because you're not a border state.
As for the Biden administration's asylum policy, the legal battle is far from over. Some predicting it could end up in the Supreme Court. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Kayla, thank you. Some Wells Fargo customers are saying their direct deposits disappeared from their bank accounts. Wells Fargo was hit with a large amount of complaints yesterday on Twitter, now known as X. It's not the first time this has happened. The bank says they're working to resolve the technical issue as soon as possible. Coming up here, drivers know it. Gas prices rising yet again. Up next, the real reason for the summer surge and how long it's likely to last. Then why more Americans oppose more U.S. aid for war-torn Ukraine, and later on, as millions of people remain stuck under heat alerts, some are more concerned for their personal safety. The crime connection during Mother Nature's extremes coming up next. Breaking as we come on the air, police in New York City are trying to control a very large crowd in Union Square at a game console giveaway that got out of hand. Thousands of people have been jumping on top of cars, throwing chairs, scaling buildings. Traffic now blocked on multiple streets. Twitch influencer Kai Cenat is now in custody for questioning. CBS reporting Cenat did not have a permit for the event. The U.S. had a slower month of hiring in July. The Labor Department reported today that employers added about 187,000 jobs last month, and that was lower than the 209,000 jobs that economists were expecting. June's job growth was also revised down to 185,000 from 209,000. The unemployment rate in July fell slightly to 3.5%. Mortgage rates are climbing towards 7%. According to Freddie Mac, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate averaged 6.9% in the week ending August 3rd. That was up slightly from the week before. It comes after a rate hike from the Fed last week and a downgrade of U.S. credit from Fitch this week. A year ago, the 30-year fixed rate was just under 5%. The summer surge in gas prices could stick around a little longer than usual. Factors like foreign oil production cuts, they're combining with extreme heat in the United States and could make the high prices stick around for the rest of the summer. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar explains.
On Friday, the average price for a gallon of regular gas in the U.S. hit $3.83, according to AAA. That's 31 cents higher than last month and the highest reading since October of last year.
Go out and write your bills out, you feel the deficit. Spend $100 on gas maybe every week or so.
Another blow to global oil prices came Thursday night from news Saudi Arabia is extending previously announced voluntary production cuts of 1 million barrels per day into September. Supply is also getting hit by this summer's extreme heat. Experts say once temperatures near 100 degrees Fahrenheit, oil refineries often have to scale back operations for safety reasons. The White House tells us they're watching this closely.
We're monitoring the situation carefully. We're in constant touch with the producers, making sure any supply disruptions are limited and doing what we can to ameliorate them.
Refineries in the South under a double threat during hurricane season. But everyone is exposed to the volatility of oil prices.
That reverberates throughout the economy, and then everything else starts to rise in price because energy is an input in everything that we produce.
Consumers certainly feeling the burn, but sometimes a business absorbs the extra costs itself, like Andy's Handy Mart, a gas station just outside Seattle.
Since the market has gone up so much, we've suffered a lot this year, and we cannot always pass that on to the customer.
Spikes in gas prices over the last month are expected to show up in the next consumer inflation report due out next Thursday from the Labor Department, which could cause a blip in what's otherwise been a downward trend for overall inflation. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Saudi Arabia is set to host peace talks on Ukraine tomorrow. That will include a delegation from the United States, Ukraine, and a number of Western and developing countries. China said today they plan to send a representative. As many as 40 nations will be at the summit. No one from Russia is planning to attend. Meantime, Ukraine says it has carried out an attack on a Russian naval base this morning. This video was provided to CNN, and it appears to show an alleged Ukrainian sea drone approaching a Russian warship. This attack reportedly took place near a major hub for Russian exports on the Black Sea. Russia's defense ministry claimed that it repelled the attack on the base, although there were reports that the warship was damaged and listing in the waters after the attack. Here at home, a slight majority of Americans seem to have enough of the war. A CNN poll released today shows 53% disapprove of how President Biden has been handling the conflict, with more women opposed, 55% than men, 53%. Only 45% of Americans support Congress authorizing more money to be sent to Ukraine to defend against Russian attacks. Women, again, are more likely to be opposed. Nearly 60% of all women said no additional funding should be approved. Nearly 2,000 nurses went on strike today at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital in New Brunswick, New Jersey. The union, representing more than 1,700 nurses, said it voted down a tentative agreement last week because the nurses have been overworked because of unbearable staffing ratios. The hospital said in a statement it is contracted with a firm to provide nursing staff during the strike. General Motors Company's stock GM was downgraded today to a strong sell by market analysts as the risk for a United Auto Workers strike escalates. General Motors responded very negatively to the UAW's 40% pay increase demand in negotiations. GM stating this salary hike would threaten the company's future. Without a deal, the UAW plans to go on strike in the middle of September and shut down a large portion of the American car manufacturing industry. And the Writers Guild of America scheduled to meet with studios today, the first time since the writer's strike started in May. They plan to discuss the possibility of restarting negotiations, but still no word yet on a similar meeting between the Screen Actors Guild and the studios. The biggest illegal robocall operation the FCC has ever seen has been hit with a record $300 million fine. The FCC says the network made more than 5 billion robocalls to more than 500 million phone numbers over 3 months in 2021. The ringleaders had been using shell companies and aliases to scam people for years before that. Now the Justice Department will need to collect on the fine. New details. Researchers with the National Institutes of Health have just released a new study on cancer treatment impacts on future aging. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares what those who have survived cancer should know about it.
Hey there, everybody. This new study found women treated for breast cancer may age faster than those who are cancer-free. But specialists say here's what they want survivors to take into consideration.
It was a total shock. Still to this day, it's shocking to me. I remember sobbing.
Two best friends, Lauren and Leanne, who met in the 3rd grade, were both diagnosed with breast cancer just days apart. They were both successfully treated at Ohio's Christ Hospital, which provided this video. 2 years later, both are now cancer-free And Leanne recently told us this.
Obviously, you would never wish this on anyone, but to have someone who is so close to you going through it with you and who could understand what you were going through, it was great to have that support.
And as both now continue their lives, researchers are now looking at what happens in the body in the years that follow, especially with aging. Dr. Jennifer Manders is a breast cancer surgeon who says when researchers looked at those treated with surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, they found all treatments appear to impact cell aging, but
so this study showed that radiation was exposure was associated with more significant aging at the cellular level.
So here's what Dr. Manders says we should also know about this research.
We know from decades and decades of studies that radiation helps cure your cancer. And so it's very, very important that we do this as part of your overall treatment.
The hope, she says, is that for those such as Leanne and Lauren, we can learn more about interrupting this aging process through everything from new therapies to attitude to lifestyle changes.
I have this YOLO mentality now where it's like, okay, we've survived cancer. You can do anything now, right?
The good news in this, because we are all living longer after a cancer diagnosis, we can look at aging well. I'm medical reporter Liz Bonus. Back to you.
Liz, thank you. Coming up next here, several states are still scorching under dangerous heat. Why first responders are now responding to more crime scenes than heat-related illness cases. We're taking the pulse of America. Our team of nearly 4,000 local journalists bringing you the headlines from across the country. We start with a proposal to crack down on retail theft in Washington.
Stolen merchandise being walked out of stores like this is a scene that plays out far too often, and Congresswoman Kim Schreier wants to confront it head on.
Organized retail theft has become increasingly violent and dangerous for employees and for customers.
And Schreier says the thieves who profit don't stop there.
These stolen goods are sold online, and the money that these crime rings bring in fuels other illicit activities related to trafficking of drugs and trafficking of people and weapons and more.
Schreier backs a bill that would create a coordination center operating within the Department of Homeland Security. It would pool resources with the Justice Department and work with local law enforcement and the private sector to come up with strategies to fight organized retail crime together.
This dangerous heat is no joke and has had an impact on everything from homes to roads and even crime.
There was a study that was done where they found when the temperature was averaging around 80 degrees, which means that during the day it was actually going up to like 95 or so, the incidence of violent crime or violence actually increased to 20%. So it points to there being a direct correlation with that.
That correlation between the two, criminal justice instructor Jeanette Arpero says, can be explained by what's called the heat hypothesis.
And that just generally means that heat induces like physiological symptoms of discomfort, frustration, aggression, which can therefore increase the possibility of like conflict or violence.
A source supplied Como News with this alarming picture showing droplets of blood scattered throughout a light rail train near Angle Lake. In this case, we learned a man was stabbed this past Sunday morning following an altercation with another rider. It happened less than 24 hours after another attack when a man was beaten in the head with a rock and seriously hurt on board a train here in Soto. All of it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. King County Sheriff's deputies tell Como both cases are open and active, all as passengers stay vigilant.
You gotta be careful and be aware of your surroundings.
Technically, the security is only for so much, only could prevent so much.
Coming up next, the women's national soccer team could have their toughest draw so far at the Women's World Cup. We're back in 90 seconds. The U.S. women's national soccer team takes the pitch again at the World Cup at 5 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday. The two-time defending World Cup champs will have maybe their toughest draw of the tournament yet, playing Sweden, who won all 3 of their pre-knockout games, scoring 8 times and giving up only 1 goal. The U.S. disappointed in the group stage despite advancing, winning only once with 2 draws. The last time these two played, Sweden beat the U.S. 3-0 at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. On Sunday, the winner moves on, the loser goes home. The United States women have never not made the World Cup semifinals. Good luck. An internet influencer charged in Romania with rape and human trafficking won an appeal today to be released from house arrest. 36-year-old Andrew Tate and his brother are dual UK and U.S. citizens, were both indicted in June, along with 2 women. They all deny the allegations. Tate won't be able to leave the country or be near any of the alleged victims. And that's going to do it for us for now. Join us again tonight for the evening edition of the National Desk. Just check your local listings. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching.